Ethan Cole never thought a single joke could change the course of his life. He had always been the kind of man who tried to lighten tense situations with humor. Out here on the alien world of Valaris Prime, tension was everywhere. Humans in the Valari had only just signed a fragile peace treaty after years of mistrust. Every meeting between the two species felt like walking on glass. One wrong word, one wrong gesture, and the whole fragile alliance could crumble. That day he found himself standing in one of the grand halls of the Valari Palace. Tall columns carved from blue crystal rose above him, catching the sunlight and scattering it into rainbows. The air smelled faintly of spice and metal, the scent of the Valari. Dozens of alien eyes watched him as he stood before the royal family. Ethan had been invited as one of the human representatives, a small recognition of his work as an engineer who had helped repair the Valari's orbital defense ring. The Valari princess, Soraya, sat on a raised platform, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. She was striking, tall and slender, with skin that shimmered faintly like pearl under the light. Her eyes were a deep shade of violet, sharp and focused, but with a spark of curiosity in them. Unlike many of the Valari nobles, she did not seem to look at Ethan with disdain. He had been answering her questions about human customs, trying to explain Earth's strange traditions. He spoke about music, food, and the little things people did to make life lighter. The Valari were noble and serious, their culture built on rules of honor and strict traditions. Jokes were rare, almost non-existent in their society. When Soraya asked him about human bonding customs, Ethan chuckled. "Well," he said, scratching the back of his neck, "sometimes when two people like each other, we marry. But sometimes humans also joke about it. For example," he looked at her, and without thinking, he added, "You'd make a cute wife." He expected laughter, or at least confusion. Instead, silence crashed over the hall. The nobles froze. Even the guards at the edges of the room shifted in shock. Soraya's violet eyes widened slightly and her lips parted. For a long, breathless moment, she said nothing. Ethan blinked, realizing something was wrong. "Wait, I didn't mean..." Then Soraya spoke. Her voice was calm, but it carried through the hall like a bell. "I accept." The words echoed against the crystal walls. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He opened his mouth, closed it, and opened it again. "You accept?" he asked weakly. The nobles began whispering rapidly, their voices sharp with disbelief. A few even rose from their seats in shock. Ethan felt heat creeping up his neck. He hadn't just said something stupid. He had said something catastrophic. Soraya stood gracefully, her long ceremonial robes trailing behind her. She looked directly at him, her expression serious but not unkind. "You have spoken the ancient vow," she said. "In our tradition, such words are not spoken lightly. To call one fit to be a wife is to declare intent. To accept is to bind. From this moment, you and I are joined." Ethan's mouth went dry. "Joined?" A Valari elder stepped forward, his silver crest of hair glinting in the light. His voice was solemn. "The princess has accepted your proposal. The bond is sacred. It cannot be undone without great dishonor." Ethan nearly staggered. He wanted to laugh, to say it was all just a terrible misunderstanding. But the way everyone in the room looked at him, with awe, with judgment, with suspicion, told him that no one here found it funny. Soraya's eyes never left his. She studied him, calm as a still lake. "Do not fear," she said softly, though everyone could still hear her. "This union will bring strength to both our peoples. You have offered, and I have accepted. Together, we shall honor the vow." Ethan wanted to protest, to shout that it had been a joke, nothing more. But he remembered the treaty. He remembered the thin line of peace holding their worlds together. If he embarrassed her now, if he insulted her in front of her court, the consequences could be disastrous. So he swallowed hard, forcing a stiff smile. "Right," he said faintly. "An honor." The hall erupted into voices, Valari nobles arguing, some furious, others oddly approving. Humans nearby looked pale and shocked. Ethan felt the weight of the moment pressing down on his shoulders. What had he just done? Later, when he was escorted from the hall, the truth sank in. He hadn't just made a bad joke. He had just accidentally become engaged to an alien princess. And judging by the way Soraya had looked at him, steady and certain she wasn't going to let him escape so easily, Ethan could barely sleep that night. He lay on the soft alien bedding in his guest chamber, staring at the ceiling made of glowing crystal. His mind replayed the moment over and over. The stunned silence, Soraya's calm acceptance, the elder's announcement. Every time he thought about it, his stomach tightened. He hadn't meant it. He hadn't proposed. But to the Valari, his words had carried the weight of tradition and honor. If he claimed now that it was a joke, they would think he had mocked their customs. That could shatter the fragile peace treaty between humans and Valari. The sound of the door opening startled him. A Valari attendant entered, bowing respectfully. "The princess requests your presence at first light," the attendant said. Ethan sat up, running a hand down his tired face. "Of course she does," he muttered. He had no choice. By sunrise, he was escorted to the palace gardens. The morning air was cool and fragrant, filled with the hum of alien insects. Soraya was already there, standing among tall blossoms that glowed faintly like lanterns. She turned when she saw him, her expression unreadable. "You did not sleep," she said softly, her voice almost like observation instead of question. "Not much," Ethan admitted. "Kinda hard to sleep when half a galaxy thinks you just got engaged by accident." Her violet eyes studied him carefully. "Accident? Do humans often speak such vows without meaning?" Ethan hesitated. This was the moment he could try to explain. "Where I come from, sometimes people say things lightly, they joke. It doesn't always mean what it sounds like." Soraya tilted her head slightly, her long silver hair catching the light. "So you did not mean your words?" The air between them felt heavy. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck nervously. "Not exactly. I didn't mean it as a formal vow. It was supposed to be a light comment. Something to make you smile." For the first time since he met her, Soraya's lips curved slightly. It wasn't a full smile, but it was something. "A jest," she said. "Yes, I have studied this concept of humor. Yet among my people, words of binding cannot be jest. Once spoken, they take root," Ethan sighed. "So what happens if I don't go through with this?" Her expression hardened just a little. "Then I would bear dishonor before my people. And the treaty with your species would be seen as a trick. My council would call it betrayal." The weight of her words hit him like a stone. Ethan wasn't a soldier or diplomat. He was just an engineer. He had come to Valaris Prime to fix machinery, not to decide the future of two civilizations. But somehow here he was. Seeing his troubled look, Soraya's tone softened. "I know this was not your intention, but you must understand. To me, you are not a punishment. Your boldness is unusual, your spirit different from those I know. Perhaps this is why fate has chosen this path." Ethan blinked at her. "You actually believe in this? That we should stay bound?" Soraya looked away for a moment, gazing at the glowing flowers. "I was raised to serve duty. My life has always belonged to my people. If this bond strengthens them, then I accept it, but..." She glanced back at him, her eyes softer now. "I will not force you to walk beside me unwillingly. Still, I ask that you think carefully before you decide." Before Ethan could respond, voices called from the distance. Several Valari nobles approached, their robes trailing like banners. They bowed to Soraya but looked at Ethan with narrowed eyes. One of them, a tall man with a crest of silver on his head, spoke sharply. "Princess, the council meets tonight. They will want assurance that this human is worthy of your vow. Many already whisper that he is an insult to our honor." Ethan stiffened. The noble's glare made it clear he was not welcome. Soraya raised her hand, silencing the noble. "He will stand beside me," she said firmly. The noble's mouth tightened, but he bowed. "As you command." He turned away, his robe swishing like a storm cloud. When they were gone, Ethan exhaled slowly. "They don't like me much." Soraya's gaze lingered on him. "They do not know you. They see only a human who stumbled into our sacred traditions. In time, perhaps they will see more." Ethan shook his head. "I don't know if I can do this. I'm not a prince or a warrior. I build machines. I fix broken things. That's all." Soraya stepped closer, her presence calm but strong. "Perhaps that is what we need. A bond that is not forged by war or politics, but by something unexpected. You are not like us, Ethan Cole, and that may be your greatest strength." Her words stayed with him as the day moved on. He attended the council meeting, where endless debates raged about his worthiness. Some nobles argued he was a blessing, proof of a new future with humanity. Others saw him as a disgrace, a weak outsider unfit to stand with their princess. Through it all, Soraya defended him, her voice steady and unwavering. She never once allowed them to belittle him. By the time the meeting ended, Ethan realized something strange. Soraya was not just accepting this bond because of duty. She truly seemed willing to give him a chance. And though he still felt trapped, a small part of him began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the disaster he thought it was. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Ethan. Life at the Valari Palace was nothing like the Earth he knew. He had spent years fixing machines, calibrating systems, and solving practical problems. Now he found himself navigating court politics, alien etiquette, and a tradition so rigid that a single misstep could spark disaster. Soraya took it upon herself to guide him. Each morning she appeared in the halls of his chambers calm and composed, offering lessons in Valari customs. How to bow correctly, how to speak in formal tones, which gestures showed respect and which could be insulting. She explained not just the rules but the reasoning behind them, her voice always patient. Ethan listened, sometimes fumbling, often embarrassed, but he tried. He didn't want to offend her people, and more importantly, he didn't want to ruin the bond that had begun as a joke and now felt impossibly real. Despite the tension, Ethan started to see Soraya differently. Beneath her regal composure, she had a warmth that few Valari showed. When she smiled, it wasn't a calculated gesture for the nobles, it was genuine. She laughed softly at his clumsy attempts at formal bows and whispered advice when he looked lost in conversation. But court life was not without its dangers. Whispers followed him wherever he went. Some nobles looked at him with suspicion, others with disdain, and a few with quiet amusement. Ethan had expected curiosity, but the intensity of scrutiny was overwhelming. He had never felt so out of place in his life. One afternoon, while walking through the palace gardens with Soraya, a group of young Valari nobles approached. They were known for their skill in combat and influence in court politics. Their leader, a tall female named Lysera, stopped in front of him, her violet eyes cold and calculating. "You are the human who dared to claim our princess," Lysera said, her tone sharp. "Do you understand the weight of her vow?" Ethan swallowed, trying to stay calm. I'm learning," he said. "I didn't mean to," Lysera interrupted, shaking her head. "Intentions matter little. Actions matter most. If you cannot prove your worth, you dishonor her, and the Valari." Soraya stepped between them, her presence commanding. "Enough," she said. "Ethan stands with me. If you wish to challenge him, do so with honor, not words." Lysera's eyes flicked to Soraya, and for a moment she considered defiance, but she nodded stiffly and stepped back. "We shall see then," she said, voice low. After they left, Ethan exhaled deeply. "Challenge me? I can barely lift one of your ceremonial swords, let alone face a Valari duel." Soraya smiled faintly. "It is not only strength that matters, Ethan. Wit, courage, and loyalty count as much. You will find your way." The coming days were filled with preparation. Soraya had arranged for him to train with the palace guards, teaching him basic self-defense, combat strategy, and the code of honor the Valari followed. Ethan struggled at first, his human muscles unaccustomed to the alien techniques, but Soraya never scolded him. She guided him patiently, correcting his stance, showing him when to anticipate and when to retreat. During these sessions, Ethan began to see another side of Soraya. In training, she was fierce, focused, and unyielding. She demanded precision and effort, yet she was also supportive, encouraging him when he stumbled. Ethan realized that her discipline was a reflection of how deeply she cared, not just for herself, but for the people she was meant to lead. By the end of the week, Ethan had changed. He was no longer just a human stumbling through alien traditions. He could hold a basic sword correctly, anticipate some attacks, and move with a semblance of confidence. More importantly, he felt a growing respect for Soraya, and a subtle trust forming between them. One evening, after a long day of training, Soraya invited him to walk through the palace terraces. The sky was a brilliant swirl of pink and orange, Valaris Prime's twin suns casting long shadows. The city below shimmered with light, a mixture of alien architecture and natural beauty. "You are improving," she said quietly, looking at him with a hint of pride. Ethan shrugged, smiling faintly. "I still have a lot to learn. I think I'll never be as graceful as you." Soraya's eyes softened. "Perhaps not, but you have something we do not always see, human creativity. You think differently. That may be your greatest strength." He looked at her surprised. "You mean, it's okay if I'm not like everyone else here?" "It is more than okay," she said. "It may be necessary. Sometimes the unexpected is what changes the world. For the first time, Ethan felt a spark of hope. Maybe he could survive this engagement. Maybe, in time, he could even earn the respect of the Valari. And perhaps, just perhaps, he might even grow to like this alien princess who had accepted him so seriously when he had only meant a joke. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the palace, Ethan realized that life on Valeris Prime was no longer just a duty. It was a challenge, a learning journey, and maybe even the start of something extraordinary. And somewhere deep inside, he could not deny a small, quiet thrill at the thought that the joke which started it all had opened a door to a future he never imagined. The day of the trial arrived faster than Ethan had expected. Word had spread throughout the palace. A human dared to claim the Valari princess, and now his worth would be tested. The court gathered in the central arena, a vast circular space carved from polished stone that reflected the light of Valeris Prime's twin suns. Nobles and guards lined the outer edges, their expressions sharp and judgmental. Ethan's stomach churned as he stepped into the arena, his human frame dwarfed by the tall Valari combatants. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye on him. Soraya stood at the far end, her posture flawless, her gaze unwavering. Despite her calm, Ethan could sense the tension in her shoulders. She cared about him, yes, but she also knew the stakes. A herald announced the challenge. Ethan Cole, human, you must face a trial of skill, honor, and courage. Only if you prevail will you be deemed worthy of the princess's bond. Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had trained, yes, but he was no warrior. His muscles ached from the drills Soraya had put him through, and he doubted they were enough. The first opponent stepped forward, a Valari knight named Rilvar, broad-shouldered and deadly with a blade. He moved with precision, every gesture practiced and perfect. Ethan barely managed to lift his ceremonial sword correctly, the weight unfamiliar in his hands. The duel began. Rilvar attacked swiftly, forcing Ethan to retreat immediately. He dodged clumsily, barely avoiding a strike that could have cut him down. His heart pounded, but he remembered Soraya's words. Courage, wit, and loyalty count as much as strength. Thinking quickly, Ethan tried to anticipate Rilvar's patterns. He noticed subtle habits, a slight tilt before a swing, a pause before a thrust. Using human improvisation, he managed to sidestep and create an opening. A feint here, a jab there, and Rilvar stumbled slightly, surprised by the unexpected moves. The arena erupted in murmurs. Humans and some younger Valari looked on with excitement, while the older nobles whispered among themselves, uncertain. Soraya's eyes never left him, calm and focused, guiding him silently. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing his nerves into focus. He could feel Rilvar's confidence beginning to waver. With one final maneuver, a combination of misdirection and timing he didn't know he had, Ethan disarmed Rilvar. The knight froze, then bowed deeply, conceding defeat. A hush fell over the arena. Ethan's chest heaved with exhaustion. He had survived, and more than that, he had earned respect, not just from Soraya, but from some of the Valari who had doubted him. Soraya walked toward him, her robes flowing elegantly. "You have learned quickly," she said, her voice calm but carrying pride. "Strength alone does not make a leader. You have shown courage, adaptability, and the willingness to learn. These are qualities we value highly." Ethan, still breathing hard, managed a weak smile. "Thanks, I had a good teacher." Her violet eyes softened. "I hope you understand now why this bond is more than a joke. It is a choice, one that must be honored, whether you are human or Valari." The nobles who had doubted him muttered among themselves. Some still whispered that a human could never fully understand Valari ways, but others began nodding in recognition. He was not perfect, but he had survived. He had adapted, and that mattered. Over the next few days, Ethan noticed a subtle shift in the palace. The whispers of doubt had lessened. Guards who once gave him suspicious glances now regarded him with cautious respect. Some nobles, while still skeptical, began to approach him with questions, curious about human ingenuity and perspective. More importantly, his bond with Soraya deepened. Training sessions became moments of quiet understanding. She taught him not only combat, but strategy, diplomacy, and the subtle art of Valari leadership. He realized that her guidance wasn't just for the trial. It was preparation for the life he might soon share with her, as more than a human outsider. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan and Soraya walked through the palace gardens. The air was cool, filled with the scent of alien flowers that glowed softly in the fading light. "You have changed," Soraya said quietly, not just in skill bee. In presence. You move differently now, with awareness of those around you. I see strength where before I saw uncertainty. Ethan laughed softly, shaking his head. "I'm still scared most of the time, I just try not to show it." "That is part of leadership," she replied. "Not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it." He looked at her, realizing that this was the moment when he truly began to understand her. The princess, so regal and confident, was also human in her own way, thoughtful, careful, and yet willing to take risks for what she believed in. Ethan's mind wandered to the words he had spoken weeks ago, the joke that had started it all. What had seemed so reckless at the time had led him to this: an impossible trial, respect from an alien court, and a connection with a princess unlike any person he had ever known. As the night deepened, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he could survive this world. Perhaps he could not only honor the bond he had accidentally entered, but even embrace it. And in that quiet moment, walking beside Soraya among glowing flowers and alien stars, he realized that the joke which had caused panic and disbelief had also opened a door to something extraordinary, a life he never imagined, and a chance to prove that a human could truly belong among the Valari. The palace was restless. Rumors of rebellion had begun to circulate, carried on whispers and shadowed glances. Not everyone accepted the union of a human and the Valari princess. Some nobles saw it as a weakness, a chance to weaken the throne. Others feared it would tip the delicate balance of power between Valari and human interests. Ethan had been warned, but nothing could prepare him for the tension that now hung in every corridor. As he walked through the palace gardens, Soraya joined him, her expression unreadable. "They do not all agree with our bond," she said quietly. "Some factions believe you dishonor Valari tradition. Others think your presence threatens the empire itself." Ethan swallowed. "So what do we do?" She looked at him, her violet eyes steady. "We show them that we are stronger together. But first we must understand the threat. Some nobles are not content with whispers. They seek action." Their steps took them to the council chambers where Soraya's most trusted advisors gathered. Ethan noticed maps, projections, and detailed reports of movements across the planet. A rebellion was brewing, led by a faction that believed the princess had been corrupted by human influence. Their plan was subtle but dangerous. They aimed to destabilize the palace from within, using sabotage and misinformation to force Soraya to abdicate, or worse, to harm Ethan. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had faced trials before, but this was different. This was no duel or ritual. This was a threat to both him and the princess, and it was invisible, hidden in shadows and whispered secrets. Soraya turned to him. "You must be prepared. They may try to strike during the upcoming festival. It will be crowded, full of nobles, humans, and citizens. If they succeed, it could ignite war. We cannot allow that." Ethan nodded, trying to steady himself. He was not a soldier, but he could think, improvise, and act quickly. He had to. In the following days, Ethan trained not only in combat but in awareness. Soraya taught him to read the signs of deceit, to notice subtle shifts in expression, the smallest gestures that hinted at hidden motives. He practiced with the palace guards, moving through crowds, learning to anticipate danger. The festival arrived, a celebration of Valari tradition, full of music, lights, and ceremonial dances. The palace was alive with activity, noble families mingling with representatives from human colonies. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. One wrong move, one lapse in vigilance, and disaster could strike. As he walked beside Soraya, he sensed the tension beneath her calm demeanor. The princess moved with grace, greeting dignitaries, yet her eyes scanned the crowd constantly. She trusted him to be alert, to notice threats she might not see immediately. Hours into the celebration, a subtle disturbance caught Ethan's attention. A group of nobles lingered near a ceremonial entrance, their movements deliberate, unnatural. Something about them set off a warning in his instincts. "Soraya," he whispered, tugging gently at her sleeve. "Those nobles, I think they're planning something." Her eyes followed his gaze, narrowing. "You are right. Prepare yourself." Before he could respond, chaos erupted. One of the nobles lunged toward the stage, attempting to disrupt the ceremony with a concealed weapon. The crowd gasped, stepping back in shock. Guards rushed forward, but Ethan acted first. Using his quick thinking, he intercepted the attacker, deflecting the strike and knocking the weapon aside. The other conspirators hesitated, shocked at the human who had intervened so decisively. Soraya stepped forward, her presence commanding, and addressed the nobles with a calm but terrifying authority. "You threaten my people, my bond, and my rule. Stand down or face judgment." The would-be rebels faltered under her gaze. The guards quickly restrained them, and the chaos was contained. The festival resumed, though tension still lingered in the air. Ethan's heart pounded. He had acted on instinct, guided by training and observation, and he had succeeded. More importantly, he had earned the unwavering respect of Soraya and many of the nobles who had doubted him. After the festival, Soraya and Ethan walked through the quiet palace gardens. The alien stars shimmered above, mirrored by the soft glow of the flora below. "You did well today," Soraya said, her voice calm but full of meaning. "You protected more than just me. You protected our bond, our people, and the peace we have fought to maintain." Ethan shook his head. "I was just lucky." "No," she said firmly. "Luck does not explain courage, quick thinking, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Today you proved that a human can stand beside a Valari, not as a pawn but as an equal." Ethan looked at her, feeling something he had not expected. Pride, yes, but also a growing sense of connection. The bond that had begun as a careless joke was no longer a burden. It was a partnership, tested in the fire of real danger. "I still don't know if I can do all of this," he admitted. "There's so much I don't understand." Soraya placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You do not need to know everything. You only need to stand beside me when it matters. That is enough." For the first time, Ethan understood what it truly meant to be part of this world. Not just as a human, not just as a visitor, but as someone who could make a difference. As they stood together under the alien stars, Ethan realized that the universe was larger, stranger, and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. But he also realized that with Soraya beside him, he might just survive, and maybe even thrive. The rebellion had tested him, and he had risen. The bond was no longer a joke. It was real, and it would shape the future of two civilizations. The palace was tense in the days following the festival. Ethan could feel it in every corridor, every glance, and every whispered conversation. The attempt on the ceremony had reminded everyone how fragile peace could be, and some of the Valari nobles still whispered doubts about his place beside Soraya. But Ethan knew he had to stay vigilant, not just for himself, but for her and for the fragile bond that now connected their peoples. One evening, Soraya summoned him to the balcony overlooking the palace city. The twin suns had set, leaving streaks of violet and gold across the sky. The city below glittered with lights, alien architecture blending with natural formations, creating a beauty that still took Ethan's breath away. "They will try again," Soraya said, her voice calm but firm. "The extremists are not finished. They see this bond as a threat to their control, and they will act when we least expect it." Ethan nodded, swallowing his fear. "Then we have to be ready. Whatever happens, I'll stand with you." Soraya studied him, her violet eyes sharp. "You understand that danger may come in ways we cannot predict. You are human, yes, but you have proven courage. Do you trust yourself?" He hesitated, thinking of the festival, the duel, the endless training. I think so. I'll try my best." "Your best is enough," she said, placing a steady hand on his arm. "Because sometimes courage is all we have." The night passed with uneasy quiet. Ethan couldn't sleep, imagining shadows moving through the palace halls. Just before dawn, a sudden alarm sounded, sharp, echoing, cutting through the palace like a warning. "Ethan," Soraya said, her voice tense. "They are here." The attack came swiftly. A group of masked Valari extremists had infiltrated the palace, aiming for the royal chambers. Ethan's heart pounded, but he moved with the training he had received. He intercepted the first intruder, parrying and disarming with a mixture of instinct and technique Soraya had taught him. Soraya was beside him in an instant, her movements precise and deadly. Together they moved through the corridors, facing the attackers with a rhythm born of trust and shared purpose. "Isero," and realized he was no longer just reacting. He was anticipating, matching her steps, learning to act in concert with her. The largest threat appeared in the throne hall, a Valari noble with a ceremonial blade, stronger and faster than anyone Ethan had faced before. The noble struck at Soraya, and without thinking, Ethan stepped forward, blocking the attack and taking the hit himself. Pain shot through his side, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. Soraya's eyes widened, and in that moment the world seemed to slow. She made a decision, and her voice rang out, commanding and unyielding. "He is my chosen. Stop this now or face judgment." The attackers faltered. The force of her declaration, combined with the humans' unexpected bravery, shook them. Guards surged into the hall, restraining the conspirators and restoring order. Ethan stumbled, leaning against a pillar, and Soraya rushed to his side. "You are hurt," she said, concern flashing across her face. "Hold still. I'm fine," Ethan said, though he could feel the pain radiating from his side. "We stopped them." Soraya helped him to a seat, her hands steady and strong. "You risked yourself to protect me. And the people. You acted not out of duty alone, but out of courage. That is what makes you worthy." Ethan's chest heaved, both from exertion and relief. He had faced danger and survived, standing beside a princess who trusted him completely. For the first time, he felt the full weight of the bond between them. Not just tradition or politics, but trust, loyalty, and an unspoken connection. As the sun rose over Valaris Prime, bathing the palace in soft golden light, Ethan realized something profound. The joke that had begun this chain of events, the careless words he had spoken, had led him to a place where courage, trust, and partnership mattered more than fear. He had grown, adapted, and learned that humans could not only survive in alien worlds, but could also earn respect and shape events in ways even the noblest Valari had not expected. Soraya stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his. "Today you proved yourself," she said. "Not just to me, but to everyone who doubted you. The bond is no longer a formality. It is a choice, and you have chosen well." Ethan looked at her, feeling a warmth he had not expected. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said softly. "But I'm glad it did. I'm glad I'm here with you." Soraya's eyes softened, a rare smile touching her lips. "And I am glad you are here, Ethan Cole. For duty, for courage, and for something more that even we did not foresee." The palace slowly returned to normal. Guards patrolled. Whispers of the attack spread, and the council convened to discuss the implications. But for Ethan and Soraya, the bond between them had changed forever. It was no longer a joke, no longer an accident. It was a partnership forged in danger, tested by fire, and sealed with trust. As they stood together on the balcony later, looking out over the city, Ethan realized that the universe was vast and unpredictable, full of challenges and threats, but he also realized that with Soraya beside him, he could face anything, and for the first time, he allowed himself to hope that this strange, impossible bond, the result of a careless joke, might lead to something extraordinary, something neither of them could have imagined. The morning after the attack, the palace was quiet in a way that felt almost unreal. Guards patrolled carefully, nobles whispered behind closed doors, and the city of Valaris Prime shimmered in the soft light of the twin suns. The danger had passed, but the echoes of the previous night remained. Ethan moved through the halls with a new sense of purpose, no longer uncertain or fearful. He had faced the rebels, protected Soraya, and proven that a human could stand beside a Valari in courage, intelligence, and loyalty. Soraya met him in the garden, her violet eyes shining in the morning light. She wore a simple gown, but even the plain fabric could not hide her regal bearing. "Ethan," she said quietly, "today the council will decide. They will see what you have shown all of us. But know this, you have already earned my trust, and that is what matters most." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Trust was more important than approval, more important than ceremony. He had come here as a visitor, a human outsider, but now he was something more. He was part of her world, and she was part of his. The council convened in the grand hall with representatives from both Valari and human factions. Tension crackled in the air. Some nobles still looked at Ethan with skepticism, unwilling to fully accept him as Soraya's chosen. Others, impressed by his bravery and quick thinking, nodded in quiet approval. Soraya stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "The human before you," she said, gesturing toward Ethan. has faced challenges none of his kind could have imagined. He has learned our ways, adapted, and protected me and our people. I chose him not as a joke, but as my equal, my partner, and my ally. The bond between us is real and it is strong." The council was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, voices began to speak in support. Nobles who had once doubted him acknowledged his courage. Representatives of human colonies praised his ingenuity and loyalty. Even those who had remained skeptical found it difficult to argue against what they had witnessed. A human had not only survived Valari trials, he had thrived in them. Ethan stood beside Soraya, heart pounding. He looked at her, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel the depth of their connection. This was no longer about politics or accident. It was about partnership, mutual respect, and something neither of them had expected. A bond that bridged two species and two worlds. After the council's formal approval, Soraya led him to the palace balcony. The city stretched out before them, alive with light and movement. Ethan felt a sense of awe, not just at the beauty of Valeris Prime, but at the journey that had brought him here. What had started as a careless joke had led to trials, dangers, and lessons that shaped him into someone he had never imagined becoming. "You have changed me," Soraya said softly, her hand brushing lightly against his. "Not only have you earned my respect, but you have shown that humans are capable of more than we ever believed. You are courageous, clever, and compassionate. You embody qualities my people admire, even if they did not expect to see them in an outsider." Ethan felt warmth spread through him. I never meant any of this to happen," he admitted. "It started as a joke. I was just trying to lighten the mood. But I'm glad it did." "I'm glad I stayed." Soraya smiled, her violet eyes bright. "And I am glad you did. Humor may have started it, but it was your courage and heart that carried it forward. Today we have forged more than a bond between two people. We have forged trust between our species." The palace prepared for the official ceremony. Humans and Valari gathered in the grand hall, and Ethan felt the weight of their eyes on him. He had learned to walk among the Valari with confidence, to honor their customs, and to act with courage. Now he would stand beside Soraya, not as a visitor or a guest, but as a partner recognized by both peoples. When the ceremony began, Ethan and Soraya exchanged vows, not as a joke or a forced obligation, but as a choice. Their words carried meaning, binding them in trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. The crowd watched, and in that moment something shifted. The skepticism faded, replaced by awe and acceptance. Humanity had shown that courage, intelligence, and heart could transcend species, traditions, and expectations. As the ceremony concluded, Ethan glanced at Soraya, seeing her smile, not the formal smile of a princess, but the genuine warmth of someone who had chosen him as he had chosen her. He felt a sense of belonging, not just to her, but to this new world, this new chapter of his life. Later, standing on the balcony, the twin suns casting long shadows across the palace city, Ethan reflected on the journey. What had begun as a careless joke had led to trials, danger, growth, and ultimately unity. Humanity had proven its value, not through conquest, but through courage, adaptability, and heart. Soraya stood beside him, her hand in his. "We have a long path ahead," she said, "but together we can face anything." Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said, feeling a quiet strength within himself. Together, and as they looked out over Valeris Prime, a new future stretched before them, one where humans and Valari could stand as equals, where laughter and courage could shape history, and where a joke had become the start of something truly extraordinary.